Welcome to the DIY Audio Guy YouTube channel. For today's adventure, we're going to wrap our passive radiator box and give it a test bump. And the adventure starts right now. I keep my carpet in this tub right here because of all the sawdust that's out in the garage. When you fire up the router and the table saw, sawdust just goes everywhere. And so before I start any work at all, I'm going to clean off my table. I don't want my nice new clean carpet getting covered with sawdust before I even get started. I got this piece of carpet from Parts Express. It's 54 inches wide and they sell it by the yard. Just like Christmas time when you're wrapping up presents, I'm going to use the box itself to measure how much carpet that I'm going to need. I'm going to cut off a little bit of extra off of my big roll to make sure that I've got plenty to go around. In order to adhere the carpet to the enclosure, I'm going to be using some spray adhesive from a can. This is a Loctite brand that I picked up at my local big box home improvement store. You can use any brand of spray adhesive that you want. There are several available on the marketplace that do an adequate job. It's pretty easy to use. Just follow the instructions on the can. The instructions say to just spray both surfaces and let it dry to the touch before you try to adhere it together. It also said that if you want to get a stronger bond, you can spray it twice and wait a total of 10 minutes before you try to adhere the two surfaces together, which is what I decided to do because I wanted to make sure that my carpet was going to stick to my box and not come off. This part is not too terribly difficult. The main thing is you want to make sure you don't have any wrinkles when you adhere the carpet to the enclosure. It would probably be a good idea to use some wax paper so you can just stick the parts that you want to stick. As soon as the two pieces with adhesive on them come together, it's going to grab. Just press firmly and that carpet is going to stay stuck to that box. Believe it or not, this is the first time I've ever carpeted a subwoofer box. Typically I veneer my projects or I paint them with a textured coating. In fact, almost everything you see me do on this channel, I'm doing it for the very first time. I'm not a professional, I don't own or work in a shop. I'm just some random guy with a bunch of power tools out in the garage having a good time and filming it all. The reality is I'm just learning as I'm going and anybody could do what I do. All you've got to do is put a cell phone into a tripod and you can put videos up on YouTube as well. In fact, you're probably even better at this than I am, so you really should give it a try. I call myself the DIY audio guy, but that's not really true. I'm just a DIY audio guy. If you're watching this, you're probably a DIY audio guy too. If you build your own projects, tell me about them down in the comments. I'd like to hear about them. So far this has been pretty easy, but we're getting to the part that's going to be a little bit more difficult. I've got two pieces of carpet that have to come together at a seam, and that seam has to be invisible. I'm going to start off by taking a straight edge and cutting a nice straight line in this first edge of the carpet here. Now I take the other side and just lay it over and adhere it to the box, and it's going to create a very visible edge. You can see it right there. Then I'm going to take the straight edge to make sure I've got a nice straight line and take a sharp razor knife and trim that back. Now it's really important that you use a sharp razor knife here. Go ahead and change the blade out before you start. Razor blades are cheap. Change them out before you do something like this and throw them away when you're done. You can see that my seam is not quite perfect, but that's just part of the learning process. I'll do a better job next time. Now comes for the truly hard part about carpeting any box, and that's carpeting the sides. There are several methods you can use to do this. I was going to experiment with the half moon method. It turned out okay. The idea is just to fold the ends down and then take your knife and cut a half moon shape, then fold the next end in its place and cut a corresponding half moon shape. You're going to notice in this shot there's a piece of scrap wood across the top. I should have cleared this out right here when I was trying to adhere the sides. I used that piece as a shield so I wouldn't get any of my spray adhesive on the carpet that I've already put down. And you can see here I just kind of fold it over, try to get it as smooth as possible. I grab the knife and I cut a half moon shape. and it's a lot harder than it looks. You can see me here muttering and cussing as I try to do this. As a general rule of thumb, the redder that my head gets, the more frustrated I am. The result wasn't quite perfect, but it was my first try. Everybody's got to start somewhere. The next part is probably the easiest part of carpeting an enclosure, and that's the speaker cutouts. I make a couple of relief cuts just to make life easier, and then I just trim out around the edge of the circles. This is pretty easy, anyone could do this. I do the exact same thing with the speaker terminal, and speaking of the speaker terminal, let's give it a look right now. For the speaker terminals, I am going to solder on some speaker leads, and in doing so violate the Hi-Fi Vega rule. If you're not familiar with the Hi-Fi Vega rule, it's pretty simple. Thou shalt not solder on camera and then post it up to YouTube, because there will be a NASA engineer in the comments section, and they will judge you harshly for your crappy amateur soldering work. But I'm going to risk it anyways. The haters don't bother me. Let's grab the heat gun and some shrink wrap and put some nice shrink wrap on the terminals. Now it's time for one of the best parts of a speaker build. I'm going to put the subwoofers inside the box. I've got 2 passive radiators to put in here, plus the 10-inch Dayton Audio Ultimax subwoofer. I'm going to pre-drill all my holes. If you're using MDF, it is an absolute must that you pre-drill your holes. A little bit about the screws that I'm using. I think these are called Spacs. These aren't really the best screw to use. You want to use a screw with a very coarse thread. This was the coarsest thread I could find at the local Home Depot when I was there shopping. The coarser the thread, the better. Really fine thread sheet metal screws. They'll come right out of the MDF, so go for a coarse screw when you can. Off camera, I wired up my subwoofer in series. It's a dual 2 ohm subwoofer, so I wired in series to get a 4 ohm load for the amplifier. Speaking of the amplifier, I had to swap out amplifiers. I was running a 4-channel amplifier. I'll give you a link to the amp rack build where I put that amplifier rack together. That 4-channel amplifier was bridged so that I could run 2 subwoofers, one on the right, one on the left. That wasn't going to work for this setup because I needed 500 watts into 4 ohms, so I swapped out this Kenwood amplifier. I was not able to get a lot of good footage of the amplifier swap. I wanted to do an amplifier swap video, but the footage just turned out to be crap. The only stuff I got a good shot of was wiring up the speaker terminals, so here I am wiring up the speaker terminals to this Kenwood amplifier. Oh, this is getting excited here. We are almost done. Now it is time to load up the subwoofer. Just gonna lay it on the back seat for now. This is just a temporary test enclosure, a proof of concept. Let's slide this thing onto the back seat and let's wire up the 2 speaker wires to the terminal cup. I went ahead and put a wire ferrule on this, put some red and black shrink wrap so it's obvious which one is positive and which one's negative. Little touches like that make a big difference. The moment of truth. Let's test bump this box. And I am thrilled with the result. This is louder and cleaner than anything I've ever had in this truck to date. What's really super cool is the way when the bass gets really low, those passive radiators start moving. Watch it right here in slow motion. You can really tell when the low notes kick in because those passives start going like mad. I'm going to ride around for a couple of weeks and just pound on it as hard as I can just to see if it'll handle the torture. I'm going to call it a success, which means it's time to build the real box out of fiberglass. Make sure you hit the subscribe button right here so that you don't miss it. And I'm going to put all the videos for this build inside this playlist right here. I'll see you on the next adventure.